right, we'll get this started. Ryan Rossing will be a little bit late. Gerald will be on Zoom. Tom is not here, and Andrew's not able to be here tonight. As we start, we're going to start with Jeff. He's working with Oneida County Economic Development, and this is his budget presentation. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Jeff Fedorn. I'm the director for the Oneida County Economic Development Corporation here. We're offices in the basement of Rhinelander. And I want to first thank you for your contributions over the last 4 years. It's averaged about 12% of our annual operating budget. And as you'll see, I think we've invested that very, very well, particularly for the city of Rhinelander. That amounts to about $18,000 a year, and you can see over the last 4 years how that compares to the rest of the sources of our income, and again, averaging about 12% per year. Next page, what is the benefit of our corporation to Rhinelander? We're a nonprofit. Our job is to bring economic development to the area. About every 2 years we have a major project, and I listed the last three. The print pack expansion, Alstermunkshow, the new coder building out of the old print pack building, ABX expansion a couple of times. And again, what does that do? Significant tax base increase for the city of Rhinelander, high-paying manufacturing jobs created in the area, with also an economic benefit of about 1.5 to 2 times the wages that the actual employees receive. And then also just the example of repurposing the old print pack building on Kemp Street that has eliminated a potential blight situation in the future. So again, major projects, large benefit to the city of Rhinelander. From an Oneida County standpoint, again, we're Oneida County corporations. We do things all over the county. One of the things that we've done a lot with is rural broadband in terms of expanding it across the county and again, that benefits Rhinelander indirectly. We have a partnership with Nicolet College working on developing the right skills for our students to be able to stay in the area, whether that's manufacturing, whether that's skilled trades. And then also from the standpoint of business retention, we help whether if a business is kept, if we do lose a business, like example Petco, we did a lot in terms of assisting the employees. So again, this is what we're doing to really benefit your investment into the city of Rhinelander. What do we plan to do in 2021? One of the things that our board has done this summer is look at it from the standpoint of really more targeted economic development plans, a plan for Rhinelander, a plan from Naquah, a plan for Three Lakes versus an overall county plan. And I think that would really benefit Rhinelander. So we plan to work on that over the course of the next year for a 3 to 5 year plan. One of the things that's really coming to focus is the need for additional housing in Rhinelander. Critical need to support economic development. That's going to be one of our prime focuses this year to assist Rhinelander in that area. And then there's also $770,000 worth of CDB block grant close money that we're working to bring back. And we've kind of settled on a plan for public facilities, improving them from an ADA perspective. There's some slum and blight elimination, particularly in Rhinelander. And again, that's going to benefit the entire county, but it's also going to benefit Rhinelander very significantly over the course of the next couple of years. So what are we asking for from a budget standpoint? We are asking, we recognize the budgets are very, very tight. We're requesting $26,000 for our operating budget for 2020. Or 2021 in support of the efforts that I had just mentioned. I recognize that is an increase. We haven't asked for an increase in the last 4 years, but I promise you that this investment will be returned to Rhinelander many times over. What questions can I answer?
I can't really hear you. I mean, maybe.
Okay. There we go. No, I'm not on mute. That's the power of the mayor's seat there. the only thing I got out of this deal. I really want to thank Jeff for being here. I know during even our Petco closing, when we looked at it, we looked at the gaps and what was there. We put together a work group, and Oneida County Economic Development was key in that, in replacing those positions in different places, looking for the gaps, making sure that the healthcare was set up or whatever. So I want to thank you for that. That being the case, I think it's a valuable relationship to the city that moving forward, we actually extend it further. The more we work on these projects and get them going as a group collaborative with the county, with developers, with, Jeff's working hard on quite a few things for us already. So the value is there.
Right here, Classic Country. 101.3 FM and 1240 AM.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions in the future as well by email, however you want to handle that. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks, Jeff.
Gerald, can you hear okay? All right, I think Virginia from the library is up next, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have my list in front of me. Yeah, if you could hop up here, Virginia, just because they've got only one person on the camera tonight. Or one camera, I should say.
It allows for better photo ops for the camera.
All the way around the board, right over the course. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Virginia Roberts, the director of the Rhinelander District Library. The library is a district, if you're not familiar. It is 5 municipalities and the county that fund the library regularly. All right, Rhinelander is just a piece of that, and this year we are actually asking for less money because that's how the formula worked out. So,
So the second page in your package is the formula.
So if you look at this, we take 50% of the population, 50% of the state equalized value of the properties, and that adds up to 100%, and then the formula churns out. I wish I could explain it better than that, and comes up with these values. Every year, a municipality gets an extreme addition to their taxes, and every year a municipality does not, and this year it is the city that does not. Can't guarantee that every year, but we did not ask for very much as an increase. We tried to keep that very close to the bone, as we know that things are going to be dangerously tight over the next few years, so we're being very careful with our money. During the COVID crisis, the library did pivot. We were able to go online immediately and then provide curbside as well as in-person. We have a story stroll that people can enjoy. We've had in-person events outside. We are hoping to continue that and more in 2021, as we always do. And that's really all I have to say, if anybody has any questions.
All right, we're back at it. Yours was also flashing red, so if somebody's on and they get muted, you'll see a flashing red. Otherwise, it sits blue when you want to speak. I want to thank you for the job you've done at the library. And just because you get 2 minutes in this period of time, tell us your passion about books. Yeah.
Oh no, are they ruined? Don't throw them out yet. In fact, they could be.
Are we there? Part of the reason I'm a librarian is I get to play in the books. I started out working in bookstores when I was 16 years old, and I worked in antiquarian bookstores from the time I was 19 to the time I was 25. I was actually training to be an art historian. I love paper. I love the feel of it. I love restoring things to their natural value. But one of the fun parts about working in bookstores is you get to meet all the authors, and that's what I really love.
I want to thank the library for being very creative during this COVID stuff. My store is one of the stores that has a couple of pages up for that story stroll, and I have people stopping by all the time looking at it and saying how wonderful it is that the library was able to do this. And I have to agree, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job reinventing what it means to be a library in these days and times. So thank you.
We're really lucky to have Rhinelander. One of the things that Rhinelander does here is they really are very quick to adapt new technology, and we do have a lot of digital books out there. Our community, our district, read more digital books in the first quarter almost than they read all of last year. I mean, we just booked it, literally. So, anything else?
Wasn't I a king?
There you go, thank you.
That works?
We'll get used to
So is
this.
it the left
Man,
or the right?
that's where I gotta worry about learning that, because I'll be muting people wrong way and the rest of this.
We're gonna leave it
It's
like
good to
that.
do it during the
It's on.
working session so we can learn.
Right, we're gonna leave it like that. Gerald, if you have any questions, Gerald, just unmute yourself and grab my attention if you have a question.
All right. Chief Williams.
It'll take me just a second to set up. I have a very short PowerPoint for you. We are at a milestone, really, in the Rhinelander Fire Department in that we have now been operating the paramedic ambulance service for 10 years. We just had our anniversary. So a couple of my members asked if they could do a recap of the last 10 years and kind of put a little bit of a study together to see who we took care of and where we're at. And I thought it was really important, especially because there's so many new council members, to see where we started and where we're at now, and how it relates to the budget season. So I'll start with the PowerPoint first. So this slide here is really a capture of why we took over the ambulance service in the first place. We did a response time comparison of July, August, and September in 2007, and these numbers came directly from Oneida County Dispatch and their time log. The red indicates Oneida County Ambulance, and the green indicates Rhinelander Fire Department responses to the exact same addresses. At that time, we were a first responder type of an agency. We responded to all medical calls within the city, and we started initial care, and then the hospital's ambulance came and transported the patient. So we saw no revenue, and yet we were sitting on scene for extended periods of time without an ALS care or a transport to the hospital. So this is the reason we started the ambulance service. Our EMS calls, so here we have charted over the last 10 years, and you'll see in 2010, the number is very short, and that's because we first started in August of 2010, and then you'll see 2020 as well is short just because we don't have an entire year captured. But over that 10 years, we have responded to 15,345 EMS calls. So everybody wonders about cardiac arrest, and it was really important for us because our cardiac arrest and our Rhinelander Fire Department pitted against the national averages. You'll see in 2019, the national average of survival to the hospital, that is delivering a patient with a pulse to the hospital, is 28%. Rhinelander Fire Department, I'm proud to say, is between 45 and 75% depending upon the year. So the paramedics that you employ for our community are better, far superior than the national average. And I think that says a lot for not only our employees, but I think it says a lot for our community and what you've chosen to support over the last 10 years. You can see here, what the color means is the blue are people we've resuscitated and delivered to the hospital with a pulse. The red, unfortunately, are people that we were not able to resuscitate or maybe even called on scene. The code was called on scene. What's really, really, really important about this is even if that person does not end up having a quality of life or passes away several days later, the amount of lives that can still be saved by that resuscitative effort in organ and tissue donation is phenomenal. We actually personally know of one person that saved 7 other people. And to me, that in itself is a miracle on what can happen when, you know, our employees are are able to sustain that tissue until harvest. So here's 3 other types of calls that we can measure based on response. The blue is STEMI and would normally be called a heart attack by most people. The red is anaphylaxis, so severe allergic reaction. And staggering, the gray, is drug overdoses. So, you can see 3 of the measurable calls that we chose to be able to pull data on. So that was a super quick recap of our ambulance service over the last 10 years. I just have a couple of slides for the fire calls in the first 10 years while we're doing EMS. So you can see here our fire call volume in that same 10 years is 2,869 fire calls. You see in 2019 there's a staggering jump, and what we found out is that we were not recording, before that 2019, we were not recording our calls when we would go and assist the ambulance. So that's what we use our Chevy Tahoe for, is if we have a cardiac call, and this is part of the reason that we're so successful as well. If we have a cardiac call, we will send 2 more personnel in the Tahoe to chase the ambulance. So you have 4 trained paramedics on scene taking care of a cardiac patient. Now, when that's transported to the hospital, you're probably going to have one of those jump in the ambulance and go to the hospital, but then the other person can just go back to the station. And the Tahoe is important because it uses so much less fuel and so much less wear and tear than if we tailed those ambulances with another ambulance or a fire truck. So we started capturing that data as well in 2019 and legally by NIFR's reporting that is considered a fire call. So we started capturing that data, and what that'll do for us in the future is it'll make us a lot more successful in grant applications and grant writing because of the call volume. And it's a legit call volume. It's not that we're trying to, fudge a number or something. So here's just like a total then, overall, kind of breaks it down between fire and EMS calls. And then the total of 18,214 calls in the last 10 years with the combined. So super short, but a quick recap of where we've come from and what we've done over the last 10 years. I'm actually going to have Tom quick go around and hand out a brief handout, and I'm going to speak 30 seconds on it, just so you have this for your decision making and understand when it comes to ambulance rates and collections. So the front is a pie chart, and I just want everybody in here to understand that the majority of the calls that we go on for ambulance are Medicare and Medicaid patients. So being a county seat and being the center of the county, a larger community with the services, it's naturally a popular place to build different types of elderly facility, care facility type of things. And we've seen through research in the last couple of years that the baby boomers that are retiring in Chicago and in Madison and Milwaukee that are moving to the Northwoods are bringing their parents with them, because they don't want to travel that 4, 5, 6 hours anymore to visit their parents. They want their parents right here. So naturally, it increases our call volume, but it increases our call volume by Medicare and Medicaid rates that don't pay us what we're truly charging. Then the subsequent following sheets are just showing you what our actual rates are for the ambulance service. And you can see resident and non-resident rates are defined differently. The council passed a higher rate for non-residents a couple of years ago, and then revamped them in 2019. I'm going to be asking for council to revamp them again. The city of Rhinelander residents, taxpayers, still pay the county over $80,000 a year for a county ambulance service. We subsidize the county ambulance service. They respond into the city about 4 to 5 times a year to assist us. Like if it happened a couple weeks ago. We were on a fire call and an ambulance call simultaneously. So rather than making a patient wait, we'll use the county ambulance. Our taxpayers are subsidizing it anyways. What I think would be a fair thing to do is raise that non-resident, and then about 80 to 90 times a year, we will go out into the county and cover for Medic One. We don't get any of that subsidy back for covering them and helping them out for an ambulance. So, and yet we charge the same rate as what the county charges their patients when we go out in the county. What I think we should do is raise that non-resident rate so it's $500 more than our resident rate, and charge that when we go out into the county and pick patients up out there, because we only have a gentleman's agreement that we would charge the same thing, but we're not capturing that 80-some plus $1,000 that our taxpayers are paying for an ambulance service we rarely use. So I think if we charge $500 more for a non-resident rate, and a lot of those are going to be the Medicare and Medicaid rates that we won't necessarily collect on, but the ones that aren't, we can help offset some of that 80. In 2015, it was $86,000. I actually have the number with me. But we can try to recapture some of that money back for our taxpayers. So I'll be looking to work with the council in the near future on that as well. We can transition into the actual ambulance budget. Do you want me to put it up on here, Zach, or do you want to run the PowerPoint so it's? I know you kind of.
They have paper copies in front of them unless you're pointing them to specific areas.
Well, I noticed that some of them are different. Not ambulance or fire, but some of the other ones seem different than what we. And what I.
Because what Wendy emailed is what's accurate.
Okay. Okay.
That's what the most up to date is.
Okay, so then I hope, I'm only going to hit on a couple of quick things here anyways. So with the ambulance, we're looking at requesting a little bit more a little bit less of what we'll make next year. This year, let me just quick. Yeah, this year I'm projecting about $150,000 loss or less revenue than what we projected, and that's nationwide. Rhinelander's not unique there. COVID, for whatever reason, when COVID hit, our call volume dropped significantly. So in the ambulance service. So I think a lot of people were just kind of staying at home and they were afraid to call an ambulance or go in. But that's a nationwide shortage, not just a Rhinelander thing. Going down, really, there isn't much that's changing in the ambulance budget. The operating supplies had to go up a little bit when President Trump introduced all the tariffs. That made a lot of our ambulance and medical supplies cost increase. Maintenance is going to have to stay higher simply because the age of the ambulances. 2 of the ambulances right now need particulate filters. They're $6,000 a piece for particulate filters. Justin Ernst has a method to delete the particulate filter and make the truck run to peak performance. So we can do both rigs for less than that $6,000 by Justin's tweaks. So we'll look at that. Thankfully, we have Justin to be able to do that. The one thing I will say for next year will be the last year of one of our loan payments for the ambulance service. So next year, 2022 then, $25,000 will drop off of the budget for a payment. I think it's important to note that with the ambulance service that we're paying for all of our debt. Now, there is a transfer from the general fund fire department over to the ambulance service, but that transfer pretty much mirrors what past administrators have shifted for wages and benefits. And in particular, the benefit part that shifted over with the wages. So that's where some of that shift could look to be why. So we do shift, Wendy's got,
Highway 101 is on the way. You also gotta hear
160,000 for next year to shift from fire over to the ambulance budget to cover like the gap. So. We did drop off some in the educational incentive because through negotiations and the union's contract, the educational paramedic bonus that was given at the end of the year is now rolled into their base wage. So that will be a significant drop on the budget as well. Anybody have any questions on the fire budget? Or, I'm sorry, ambulance budget. I've got like 6 of them up here, so. Okay, moving on then, fire department budget. This is actually the only budget I was able to meet on. So starting right at the top, one important note will be a sick leave payout. I'm anticipating a retirement in the first quarter of 2021. So there'll be a sick leave payout. Wendy and I had a discussion early on about should we budget for a vacation, the vacation and like wellness and that payout as well. And it'll be my retirement. And I feel that, I know you were presented that in the clerk's office that you're going to budget for that payout. It's my anticipation and in the fire department that if I leave in the amount of time that it would take to recoup that, they're going to be doing a search, and I have officers within the fire department that can step up and in that interim role and have no problem and have a seamless transition within the fire department. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think the general fund needs to budget that extra money for next year, because I think that we have officers within that can pick up that slack and on a temporary basis. Looking down through then some of the...
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
You can just, was that discussed with them?
Was that discussed with the officers within the department?
The extra duties or anything
was.
else? Okay, thank you. That was,
Yeah, it's not like a 6-month period or anything, you know. I think the most would be like right around a 10-week period. So if that's the case, I don't see like the hiring taking much less than that. So I guess it all depends on what's decided to move forward. The telephone is increased a little bit because of the fire chief having a cell phone. Zach and Wendy and I had discussed the building repair and maintenance, dropping that significantly down to $2,000 from $6,000, and then dropping office supplies from $4,000 to $2,000, and then adding in a contingency line the $5,500. This would be the first time I've really dealt with a contingency, you know, so I'm not super familiar with with it, but the way Zach approached it, it makes perfect sense to have it but not have it. You know, it's there if so be or so needed. Any questions on the fire budget?
I would just say that I'm sad to see you go. I'm, you know, I've gotten to know you a bit here, and
I'm not leaving yet.
well, I know, but when you do, you know, it's you know, a limited time here, but I do have a couple of questions. Oh, actually, just one. Do you see dropping the maintenance budgets to $2,000? You don't see that as cutting it a little close in case something needs to be fixed, like a major repair of any sorts?
Well, honestly, I think if there's a major repair, so we've had the roof redone.
Yeah.
A couple years ago. You know, we have a new boiler in for the main part of the station. You know, I think if a boiler goes out, or if we have an HVAC issue, or, you know, we've got newer windows on the back of the station, I see 6,000 not being enough. So I think no matter what, I mean, this would pay for some paint or, you know, little things that we do. I think no matter what, you're gonna be coming to council to say, hey, this major catastrophe happened, we gotta do something about it. Honestly, I don't think, we've been really, really lucky. You know, throughout my career as chief, I've come to council on numerous occasions and said, you know, hey, we really need to put forth some effort into this project, or we need to look at this during a borrowing so that we're maintaining the fire station. Ideally, I would love this community to demo that building and build a joint police and fire building that could be fuel efficient, you know, energy efficient. You could do so many things different to save so much money for the future. At some point, the city's going to have to quit throwing good money after bad, period.
Solar panels, the works. What would you say the condition of our fire trucks and ambulances are in right now?
Our fire trucks are outstanding. We've been really fortunate to keep on rotation, although our rotation isn't necessarily a documented type of a plan. Our ambulances, we started out the ambulance service 10 years ago with a 5-year rotation plan per ambulance. We're now 10 years in with the same 3 ambulances. And we're spending a ton of money. Thankfully, we have Justin. I cannot tell this council enough positive about Justin, because he has saved us so much money, it's ridiculous. So we're spending a lot of really good money after bad on ambulances. And I've got projections, I've got cost estimates to replace ambulances. I don't think it would be justified to replace 3 of them, but at this point, I think that we're probably looking at 2 for sure.
Okay.
So, and then I think another really important vehicle would be like that Tahoe, because we use it so much as a chase vehicle. We use it so much in the winter as an inspection vehicle when, you know, our ambulances have liquids that can't freeze, so you'd have to leave them run. Our fire trucks have water, so, you know, at 30 below, it's not real conducive to take them out on an inspection. So, you know, that Tahoe is really, really a super valuable vehicle to us.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just address real quick the financing sources. So these are the operating budgets, so those capital items that were mentioned, so those catastrophic issues. One, city reserves would be an opportunity to fund them. Part of it is expenditure restraint, right, and the limitations of which this budget has to be prepared within. So if there is a major capital project to be likely picked up in a borrowing, which we haven't talked about the borrowing, we'll talk a little bit about it as it relates to streets tonight, but as Terry had mentioned, all the departments were asked to look at their fleet and really look to next year and to figure out what those fleet needs are. So in ambulances being considered, or two, I think we're actually, as he just mentioned, were listed in there. And then just the reality that we're still paying debt on standing up the ambulance service and just trying to balance at what point is it necessary. But I would agree, you absolutely want to put the fleet in particular on a rotation. We talked about that with Lloyd in the police department. And so hopefully, because of some borrowing issues and then moving some cash around, as we talked about previously, when it comes to the past borrowing, where those projects weren't fully spent down, that we could maybe meet some other needs elsewhere with those and then address some of these other kind of looming issues. But I just want to chime in on those couple points just for some additional information or background.
Chief, question, $80,000 looks really good to come into the city if that's money that we could recoup for the outside city limits services that you provide. So realistically, what do you see that the county would potentially move things around or adjust things if we were to do that?
No, I don't think so. And I think the way for us to approach it is really for me to have a meeting with LifeQuest, our billing company, because they're the ones that are going to be able to legally define, is this acceptable through Medicare, billing, and make sure we're not stepping on a landmine, But if LifeQuest gives us the go-ahead on this, it's something that we set our own billing. The county doesn't. The county has nothing to do with our billing. So if the city decides that for all non-residents, whether we respond to Walmart and pick up a non-resident, which right now we charge the higher rate, or we respond out into Pine Lake to pick up that non-resident and we charge that higher rate, that's your call, honestly. So, and the county, if we're subsidizing them, are they going to charge a higher rate to come into the city when we're already subsidizing them? I don't think that would happen. And if it does, it would happen on 4 calls a year, average.
Right. I think it's fair. And we need new ambulances, so.
I'm sorry, but as a city taxpayer, that's a big chunk of money we're letting out every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I have brought that up for the last 10 years, just so everybody in this room knows. I've brought that up every budget proposal meeting for 10 years.
I think we should do it if it's acceptable.
Now, I will do some research then and get back to the council so that we have all the I's dotted and T's crossed. Anything else? Okay, next budget that you have in your packet would be an inspection department budget. I honestly don't really know how to approach this. This was a Daniel idea initially, because Daniel wanted something for zoning and ordinance enforcement and be under planning. I don't know enough about this being built up to say I support it or I don't support it. This is money shifting out of the fire department budget into an inspection department budget, creating something separate. And again, I don't know enough about this to support it or not support it.
And I would just say it's all one pot of money in that it's just more or less for accounting purposes. There's probably a philosophy on maybe a bit more transparency on what the city's investment is, fire service versus inspection. I don't want to read someone's mind, but that's how I would approach it. And especially if there's a desire over time to think about code enforcement, ordinance enforcement, some of those activities that have been discussed, this could be an area where you would identify some additional resources potentially for that activity to occur. Certainly when the new zoning code's passed and administration of that code, there might be some additional software costs and those types of things, so you could identify those in here. But at this point, this budget hasn't changed. It's remaining as is, as you see in there from a request standpoint, just some cost accounting for the department itself. So I don't have anything else to say other than maybe hence an explanation of why that was the case.
So to Zach's comment, I would say that if it's like for tracking purposes, I completely support it and understand it, Okay, moving on. This is a new one, and I'm going to take blame for not asking Wendy about this or Zach about this, but Health and Human Services, I've never had, in my 10 years, I've never had a part of my budget be the Humane Society.
Yeah, and it isn't, I wouldn't say it's a part of yours. I think it was the way, again, the structure of the workbook was compiled with Health and Human Services. It wasn't a conscious decision, at least on my part this year, to do that. That was new last year, so, yeah, so Terry, you don't have to talk about, I mean, health officer, maybe you want to talk about, but the Humane Society doesn't come quote-unquote out of your budget, and we want to probably save that one for another day anyway. It's not scheduled to be on our agenda tonight.
So there's a difference in the budget that you're looking at and the budget that I proposed. Harry is our health inspector, and I proposed a wage increase for Harry. Harry is in the, if you look at the non-union resolution, Harry's a part of that, but Harry's treated as a contractor to the city. He doesn't get any of the city's benefits, even as a part-time employee. And rarely has Harry gotten a wage increase, so every year I try to get a little percentage in for what he does. And I think, truthfully, to understand what Harry does would take somebody to go along with him. Thankfully, Harry lost, and not to Harry, but to our service, thankfully Harry lost his sense of smell in Vietnam. So Harry is the ideal person to be our health officer and to go into some of the buildings he does. I will not go in the buildings with him. He tries, but I will not. So it is what it is. There's about a $400 difference in the proposal. I guess at some point, and $100 in the car allowance, because Harry uses his own personal vehicle. So I would like to see in the future some type of, gratitude toward a guy who works his heart out for the city for next to nothing. Because we could not replace Harry for what we're paying right now, guaranteed. There's nobody that will do his job for what he's getting paid. So I don't want to, and as many places as Harry takes care of for our city, I don't want to leave that go. Moving on to, next you have Hazmat, yes. So the hazmat budget, really nothing has changed there. We should still see a $16,000 income, and that is because we are a part of the CAT team. It was originally a CAT team through Wausau Fire as the level A team. So we get $16,000 a year for that. And then back when Julie Ostrander was the treasurer for the city, she created a sub-account within the hazmat fund for donations to the fire department. So if we do any fundraising or that, I put that in there. And then, so one of my things in my work session to you guys was new bunker gear replacement, and 10 sets of bunker gear at $2,500 a set, so $25,000. Rather than it being a borrowing issue, I think between what's left in this year's budget for hazmat and then next year, we can replace those 10 sets, so we won't have to hit a borrowing issue out of it.
Classic Country on Hobart Legends.
Any questions with that? I would tell you that in the future, if the hazmat goes away, and I've said this every year, if the hazmat charge goes away, then this budget gets spent down to zero and it goes away. And lastly, for me, would be the tank inspection. We do all the UST, AST tank inspections for Rhinelander, Minocqua, Eagle River, all of the surrounding townships. We have one trained tank inspector, and we used to make a pile of money. You can see in the $20,000 range, upwards of 20. And last year, at the end of last year, they changed the state mandate that we only have to inspect tanks that are greater than 5,000 gallons. That's truly like only your gas stations, and maybe, well, like Frito-Lay in their farm doesn't even have that big a tank. So our revenue dropped drastically. So you can kind of see where our revenue is. We don't buy much out of it. We have some training expenses. We've purchased some computers, a couple radios, things like that out of this fund. You know, you can see the fund has a pretty good balance. So at some point, you know, like if we replace the Tahoe, it would be my recommendation that some of the things for the Tahoe replacement, maybe like some of the lights and radio, some of the specialized equipment could be funded out of this, because that Tahoe, and I'm not suggesting we purchase a Tahoe, I would actually suggest a pickup truck, but that vehicle is taken by this inspector on those inspections as well. So, you know, I would expect that because this is a healthy fund, that some of that money could be used towards that vehicle replacement. When it comes to the Tahoe and vehicle replacement, the Tahoe actually was asked of me to be repurposed to another department within the city. So another department asked to be able to use it. Other than that, that is my 6 or 7 budgets I have on different areas. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thanks for the PowerPoint.
Thank you. You know, it was something our employees worked really hard at, to do the research to put that 5-minute PowerPoint together, and I think it's really worth it. I think it really gives you guys a snapshot of what we've done for the community over the last 10 years.
Once again, and I've said it before, with time being tissue, when it comes to emergency situations, we are better positioned for a healthier life in the Northwoods than almost anywhere else in Wisconsin. Thank you for that.
Shoot. Oh, wow.
Well,
Daniel?
I was just going to ask a simple question. What do you attest your cardiac response and resuscitation rate to? Is it because you can get there faster?
right there, those guys. We've got an we've got an amazingly trained group of people, and we have, and it goes to our fire saves as well. We have such an aggressive department, and they're not afraid to do any task that's put in front of them, and they just get in there and do it, and do what's right, and do what needs to be done. So the training that you guys have paid for, you know, putting this together, and the employees we have are 100% it.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, next.
Dan. Dan's up. So for his budget, we're going to go over obviously the street department, but then we'll cover recycling, parking lot advisory, and then we'll also talk about the Pratt budget tonight as well.
Zach, do you need this? Oh, yeah, maybe. Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So for the street department, 2021, we're looking at a few projects. We got some grant money for the Timber Drive, so we'll be doing reconstruction. That'll be our biggest project. And we also, I've worked out a 5-year plan for our chip seal plan for projects for the next 5 years. Our crew is reestablishing some of the crack fill operations we haven't done for a while. We're reestablishing the asphalt mill overlay. We're bringing back reestablishing the concrete curb and sidewalk. And then we're looking to purchase this hot box that will increase our asphalt input on patching around town and placing potholes, doing a better maintenance on our asphalt.
Quick question, Dan.
Yep.
The sidewalk that was put in at Timber and Coolidge there, who did that?
We did.
Looks good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really zeroed in on churches, schools this year to start out with. And there's the safe way to routes for school. I want to make sure that the schools were all taken care of. We did a lot of curb around that school, and the crew did a nice job. That intersection was scary to me, and I had to put those two handicaps on those two corners there to make it more safe.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, thank you. So, and then also our safety, I'm looking to, we haven't had much safety the last couple of years, so we're looking to up that and get some more safety training for our guys. We do got a lot of newer guys, so I want to make sure that they feel safe and get the training there that's needed. So now next year we'll be starting our storm pipe cleaning plan, which we have never had. I've evaluated our storms at this point, and most of our storms are almost half full. So it's quite a project, but we were planning on about a month next year of sharing the vac truck and jetter with the water department and getting the plan going for starting that plan for cleaning the storm drains. Last I got is brine application for the future. This will be the year where I'll be working with our fleet manager, Justin, and getting pricing on the changeover. I've already went to the county and asked if I'll be able to work with them and purchase their brine. They've okayed that. So we're looking at getting all the numbers together, getting all the equipment that's needed, and getting a price on all this stuff to have a plan for you next year to be able to implement it the following winter. And it's very efficient. There's many ways going about it, so I'll just keep you updated in our plan on what we're going to do in numbers. Okay. And lastly, I worked with Wendy and Zach with the budget items, and so at this point I'll hand it over to Zach.
All right. So just a couple of highlights as it relates to the actual expenditures or the accounts that are within the street department budget. One, there will be a retirement anticipated in the year. So similarly to the previous discussions about that, city's practices to budget the sick leave payout. There's also, as a result of that, a bump to the health insurance because the city's practices to budget for a family plan, and so despite whatever the ultimate result is, the plan is to always budget conservatively and budget for the family plan, and then when that person's seated, then the budget gets adjusted. Dan talked about the safety budget. Essentially, that's captured in the training budget, which would be the last three numbers, 331. And then a couple down from there, we did some reallocation. Essentially, there were two budgets for vehicle repair and maintenance, and we combined them into one. Just it's easier for Justin and Dan as they code things to be doing things accurately and not splitting it up and determining, well, if it's snow and ice and it's outside of the snow and ice season, but it's on a plow truck, how does it get accounted for? It was too complicated. So trying to simplify things there. And then I'll move into some of the expenditures as it relates to the Pratt. But before I do, want to mention that similarly to the ambulance discussion around borrowing, we've looked at some of the past borrowings, and Dan's three bigger ticket items as it relates to capital expenditures and equipment, one being a loader, the one being the hot box that was mentioned, and then one being a plow truck. We'll be able to accomplish two of the three with past borrowing, so the intent is to bring that through council potentially as early as next week's meeting to get orders placed or seek council's approval, and then subsequently, if council approves, to get orders placed based upon what was reserved for past borrowings in 2016 and 2018. So instead of tapping new borrowing, we'll address those, and then the plow truck will be a 2021 borrowing item as it will be proposed to the council ultimately when we prepare the borrowing budget. So just to give you a heads up on those pieces before it heads to council. And then we did reallocate some of the additional, Dan mentioned some of the initiatives around bringing these activities in-house and then ultimately putting together a solid maintenance plan, so that way we can address things over a 3 or a 5 year cycle. And so we'll flip over, if you could, it would actually be 3 pages from there, which is the Pratt budget. And now that we've had the Pratt for a few years, essentially, there's some state statute language that governs how the Pratt was established and how much the city has to spend of its own money, meaning general fund tax levy money, before it taps the Pratt. So we put together, basically on the top, again, as you've seen with other budgets, it's the revenues. So we're planning about a $500,000 revenue on the Pratt budget, conservatively, and then you'll see a couple of new items just below the line there: center line painting, some spray patching, crack sealing and patching. Those are activities Dan plans to accomplish in-house with our crews. Some of it's materials, but putting that to the Pratt, because it's clearly vehicle maintenance street maintenance and repair, and be completely appropriate to assign to the Pratt, and that allows some flexibility or some relief on the tax levy, but yet still keeps us in compliance with our state statute rule around the city's utilizing its own funding sources first. Dan mentioned Timber Drive. That's the $823,000 item. That's the project that the city received a $450,000 grant for some time ago from the DOT. Actually, it was this year. We received word on that. So that project has not been fully ready. It's not ready for bid, but it will be once we get the scope and the design all hammered out, and that'll go out to bid then in the spring with anticipated construction sometime next summer. That's a mill and overlay project with some potential to do curb and gutter, as well as potentially a recreational trail or bike lanes or whatever is ultimately decided. So those details have not been worked out, but that's essentially the scope. It's about a $1.2 million and change project. That's the big one planned for 2021. Street maintenance, $150,000 that Dan talked about with the Farmer Asphalt, or Dan's plan about doing a section of town every year for chip sealing. So before you lose a street, before you stop throwing good money after bad, you'd like to get a chip seal down, which generally entails with some sort of patching, maybe crack filling, maybe a mill, and then they overlay it. But to do a large section of town next year with about $150,000 in resources. So it gives you 5 to 10, but on a good year, 7 average extension of your life to your surfaces of your streets. Those are generally done on streets that you're not planning to tear up for hopefully 10 years. So it takes some coordination, takes some planning, and some foresight to make that commitment on which streets you do. But that's the street maintenance item in that budget for $150,000. And then the other ones beneath that are the debt service on the outstanding debt that was issued for Wabash, Stevens Street, and then $2 million borrowing in 2018. That was for a large amount of street activity. And then the bottom part to that budget is transfer to bike ped advisory. 10% of the Pratt fund goes to bike and ped, and so essentially we're planning to budget a $100,000 transfer to bike ped. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have already fleshed out everything for bike and ped, but even as of 4 o'clock today, when the mayor had his bike ped group, still putting some formulative details on what exactly that will be spent for, but you'll see that it's at least accounted for, planned to be spent. At the end of 2021, we're projecting a $900,000 surplus in the Pratt, and so there is some opportunity to take on additional projects, but because we don't necessarily have any other grants, this current year is an off year for state transportation grants. Next year, when the state gets together to do its budget, and let's just sure hope that there's a bounce to the amount of travel, because that's ultimately what funds the transportation fund, is the gas tax. And so hopefully we can continue down a good path with the state funding local projects with generally an 80-20 split, where the state puts up sometimes as much as 80% and the city puts up 20, but we'll have some reserves in the Pratt to be able to tap some of those big projects. And so I mentioned previously, we're working on a 5-year capital plan that starts identifying what are the 2- and 3-year out street projects, because we really need to start applying now. In fact, October 31st is the time frame where we have to apply for an intent to apply to get state or federal funding, or sorry, federal funding, not state funding. So similarly to Stevens Street, that started off with that process. So anyway, long story short, that's the Pratt budget, and gives you a sense of that. So any questions on that? Or Wendy, if I missed anything? Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can go back to recycling and the parking lot advisory. Recycling budget is pretty straightforward. That covers the recycling aids. We're going to be working on putting together the 2021 recycling grant here in the next 2 weeks. It's due October 1st. So that's what designates the aids that we get from the state on recycling. And then we transfer $161,000 from the general fund, from the property tax levy, to cover the other activities within that budget. So the Eagle Waste contract is in there. That's under professional services. And then our salaries and wages that are associated with this, which we believe accounts for all the brush pickup activities, the spring and fall brush pickup that occurs in the city. So that's the recycling budget. Any other questions? Parking lot advisory, that's the next one there. You can see that at the end of the day, we're projecting a shortfall in the parking lot advisory. Have been having some ongoing discussions at a staff level about our procedures and how we issue permits and what our enforcement activities are like. And so we're going to be seeking some more information on that, because we're not going to have enough money to maintain our parking lots at the end of the year, or not necessarily at the end of the year, but at the end of probably 2022 or beyond, we're going to have exhausted that surplus. So we're going to want to at least address that and stay on a path of financial sustainability, because that doesn't account for really any cracks, sealing or patching. There's no projects planned outside of that. That's just purely operational, snow removal, whatever it takes to keep the parking lots open, not maintained.
Can we share a map with council of the properties that we own that are parking lots at this point, just so they get a concept of that? I don't know. There were ones as we were going over, Zach and I, Monday, were we going over properties? Maybe last week, I don't remember. But there were surprising ones that I actually didn't know that we owned. So when it comes to that, it's just good for us to have that overall picture of what we have in parking lots. Thank you.
Zach, are there any, like, I guess, ideas of how to generate money to put into the budget?
Well, we've been asking more questions than we have answers at this point, okay. But one of the questions is, to what extent are we allocating 24-hour parking? It sounds like we have some constraints on that. Maybe we re-look at that. Rates, the parking rates is another one. It's probably going to be like anything else, a blend of a couple things that will come out as a result or recommendation, but at least the budget is established. You've got the information, know that it's something that we need to continue to look at. But I think, it's interesting to look at the different day parts to see what parking volumes and demands look like. When you get the map, you'll see maybe an opportunity to talk about, okay, why does the city maintain this property as a public parking lot? Who are the users? Are they permitted users, or is it just people popping in there and using it on a kind of casual basis? But yeah, I think it definitely warrants a conversation.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So that pretty much covers those pieces. Dan, anything else?
No, I think
Any other questions for Dan?
I just want to thank you for being proactive. When it comes to the tenor of change, your department's taking new direction and getting more done, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Dan, when do you guys typically take care of damaged, the metal storm grates on the curbs, the ones that come over the curb like that? When do you typically repair those if one isn't ill repaired? Do you have to wait for like a recurbing job, or is that something that is within your budget to take care of as it needs?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And yes, that's what we use our concrete budget for. I love it when people call that in, when they say that there's one needs to be repaired, or there's one that's failing, or whatever. And we will repair those catch basins no matter what the condition of that street's in, because it's very important for our storm system.
I have a constituent that asked me that, because apparently they have one on their street that's actually, they said it looks really like someone, if they hit their leg on it, could like cut their leg open because it's all jagged and stuff. So I'll send you a message and let you know the location of it then. And
yeah, and I love phone calls. It helps us out, because I drive around trying to find these, but when residents call, it's great. Even like catch basins, I think we have repaired around, I want to say 28, 29 catch basins this year.
Okay.
So anyone's failing, we'd love that phone call, get on before it, it gets out of hand. And
I just wasn't sure if it was something that you'd have to like budget for next year to fix or whatever, but
concrete budget.
And you'll see the stormwater budget next week. We just finished the stormwater budget yesterday. So,
great.
And that accounts for where he would charge those types of activities. So we've got a pretty good handle on now what we hope to do in that regard. All right, thanks, Dan.
Yep, thank you.
The last two in your packet tonight are the dental and the HRA plan. Last year, it's my understanding that the city took an increase. The dental plan needed to raise some additional revenues in order to stay solvent. And Wendy, I'm going to ask on the dental rate side of things, can you address what the 66? We're showing a deficit essentially for next year. At the budget, remind me what Cottingham and Butler had decided on the dental rate side of things.
On the dental rate side of things, we are self-funded, so we don't have a regular renewal each year where Delta Dental says, okay, this is what your premium is going to be, and then you negotiate it. So we can pretty much decide what we're going to do, but we take what they suggest to make sure that we're covering our expenses. And last year was the first year that we took their suggested rate and did 50% employee pays, 50% employer pays. And if you look at what was budgeted for 2020, we also budgeted into showing a loss, because part of the budgeting strategy is you're conservative on your revenues, but you're a little less conservative on the expenses, just so that you know you're budgeting in case your expenses are a little more than what you had anticipated. So even though this is looking like we're budgeting for a $6,000 loss in 2021, the likelihood of that is not concrete. And about 2 weeks ago, I contacted Delta Dental to see if they could give us a suggested premium for 2021, and I'm just waiting for them to get back to us. But otherwise, the numbers here are based on if the rate was flat from this year to next year. And things are a little bit unique with the COVID environment. It's hard for me to project what the expenses are going to be for 2020, because there could be lower dental activity right now, or there could be an increased amount in December. There's no way for me to know that. So actually, we might have a little more of a surplus from 2020 that's going to carry over to 2021. But so far, we're pretty close to the wire that we're more than likely going to have to look at the rates going forward. But right now, it's not definite that we have to raise it at this point.
Any questions on dental? All right, the last budget in there is the health plan, or the health insurance benefit. The HRA component of the health insurance. So it's an option. The city provides one health plan, but with an option to participate in the health risk or the HRA. Sorry. Those items are budgeted there. We will have a conclusive information from our health broker very soon, but the early information we got today is very encouraging, so we'll share that information once we get final word from them. as it relates to the city's health plan, and the expenses, how it impacts our budgeting essentially for next year. But that gives you a sense of what's going on in the HRA. Anything, Wendy, you want to say beyond that?
No, this is, 2020 is the first year for us to have this HRA, which is owned by the city. The employees pay a contribution into the HRA, and the city's taking on the risk to keep the employees' out-of-pocket expense lower. And for the projection of 2020, again, it's really hard to estimate, but we are going to be towards the positive with having a surplus. And then for 2021, I budgeted a little bit higher for the HRA, assuming that we've got some vacant positions, so that could be family plans coming in, which would be a little more of contribution. And the budgeted expenses are budgeted higher, but according to Cottingham and Butler's study over how we are doing in 2020, is the utilization is really only going to be around 25 to 30% of the program, where what an employee is paying for is if they are on the family plan, they're paying a contribution for the city to take on the risk of $6,000, and then for single, it's $3,000.
Any other questions as it relates to that? Turn it back over to you.
Thank you for sharing the good news. I have a hard time sitting on good news when it comes across my desk. I'm like, I want to share this, but until it's confirmed, it's just a thing. What I would like to say as a wrap up, even as far as tonight, but as far as the projections and when it comes to 2020 and the difficulties it's proposed to a lot of people, I want to thank our department heads, Zach and Wendy, because they're doing a substantial job in giving us comfort moving forward. I know I put out there that setting the budget sets the pace for what we're doing, and we're learning that as we look at projects that we're doing and other things, and we're not missing a beat, and I don't believe we're leaving any pitfalls, but I want to thank you for that diligence.
Thank you. Oh, next meeting, next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. I've checked myself since we flipped Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so next Wednesday. Sorry, I'm going to let Gerald go there. He's going to soccer. He's going to soccer, but I got a minute.
Yeah, just because we don't have
I'll hang around.
available time, I will definitely make sure